My wife slid a notebook across the kitchen counter and said, "I think you should read this." I opened it. It was my handwriting, pages and pages of it. Things I had written in the middle of the night, hidden in the back of a closet, never shown anyone. She had found it. She had read every word, and she was smiling. Not because she felt guilty, because she thought it made her untouchable. She had no idea I made copies. She had no idea that 3 days earlier, while she was at work, while she pictured me sitting quietly in that house like I always did, I had already made the phone calls that would change everything. But to understand why I made those calls, you need to go back to our wedding night and the promise I should have never agreed to. Kelly and I got married young. We were the kind of couple that made it look easy, not because it was, but because we were both too stubborn to admit when it wasn't. We moved to a small town in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan where the winters are brutal and the community is tight, and we built something there. A house, a routine, a life that fit us the way a worn-in jacket fits. Not perfect, but ours. Kelly was the smartest person I had ever met. She read everything, noticed everything, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and tell you within 60 seconds exactly what was wrong and exactly how to fix it. I loved that about her more than almost anything else. We didn't have a lot of money. My back had been bad for years. Chronic pain that made some mornings feel like moving through wet concrete. But we had each other, and we had the pact. The pact was Kelly's idea, our wedding night. Good line. Candles. She looked at me across the table and said, "If either of us ever strays, the other one gets to decide what happens next." I thought it was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me. The other one gets to decide. I said yes without blinking. I meant it as a vow of loyalty. I should have asked her what she meant by next. There was one thing I noticed and filed away without ever looking at directly. Kelly had always kept her cards close. I thought that was strength. I didn't yet understand it was strategy. His name was Chris. He worked with Kelly at the factory. Same shift, same building. She mentioned him the way you mention anyone from work. Casually, in passing. Chris covered my lunch break today. Chris is hilarious. You'd actually like him. I filed it away as nothing. Small towns have small social circles, and Kelly had always been the type to collect people, find the interesting ones, and pull them close. Then sometime in the fall of 2013, something shifted. Not dramatically. Not in a way I could name. She started keeping her phone face down on the counter. Just that. I noticed it the way you notice a door that's always been open, suddenly closed. Not locked, not barricaded, just closed. You tell yourself it means nothing because doors close all the time. I told myself it meant nothing. I found the messages on a Tuesday. I wasn't looking for them. I had never once gone through Kelly's phone in 12 years, but she left it on the counter while she was in the shower. It buzzed, and I looked over and saw his name. I picked it up, read 3 messages, put it back down exactly where it had been. Then I walked to the back porch, sat down in the cold, and stared at the tree line until it got dark. I didn't cry, didn't throw anything. I just sat there and felt something inside me go very, very quiet. The only thought cycling through my head, over and over, wasn't how could she, or how long, or what do I do now? It was, she remembers the pact. She remembers exactly what she said on our wedding night. The other one gets to decide what happens next. I sat on that porch for a long time. I confronted her that night. Kelly didn't flinch, didn't deflect. She admitted everything immediately. The affair, the months, the depth of it, with a steadiness I mistook in the moment for honesty. Then she looked at me and said, "You remember what we promised each other?" I said yes. She said, "So do I." Something about that dropped the temperature in the room 10 degrees, but I pushed it aside because she followed it with all the right words. That she was sorry, that it was over, that she needed me to trust her one more time. She said she wanted to end things with Chris in person. She said she needed me there when she did it. I said okay. I still don't know exactly why. Maybe I wanted to believe the marriage was worth saving. Maybe I was more afraid of being alone in that house than I was of anything else. Maybe I had spent so many years trusting Kelly's instincts over my own that I didn't know how to stop. Chris came over on a night in October. He walked through our front door like a man who had no idea what he had walked into. And I stood in my own living room and watched my wife become someone I had never met before. I can't write the rest of that night. Not yet, maybe not ever. What I can tell you is that when it was over, Kelly looked at me, completely calm, completely composed, and said, "You're part of this now. You understand that, right?" I understood. The weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. We went to work, made dinner, watched television in the evenings like a normal couple in a normal house in a normal small town where everyone knows your name. Nobody knew anything. At least, that's what Kelly believed. What she didn't know was that I had started writing. Not a confession, not a plan, just words, raw and unordered and desperate, that I needed somewhere outside my own head. I wrote in a notebook tucked inside the lining of an old jacket in the back of the closet. I wrote in the middle of the night when Kelly was asleep. I wrote because if I didn't put it somewhere, I was going to come apart. I wrote about the pact, the phone, face down on the counter. October, how a person can love someone for over a decade and still not know them at all. Kelly never mentioned the notebook. She never mentioned a lot of things. I kept waiting for something to shift, for the version of Kelly I had married to come back, for the weight of what had happened in that house to land on her the way it had landed on me. It never did. That was the thing that finally woke me up. For a while, I almost convinced myself we were going to be okay. We had settled into something that looked, from the outside, like a real marriage. Kelly was warm again, attentive. She cooked on weekends, asked about my back, laughed at my jokes the way she used to. I started to wonder if I'd overreacted, if the notebook was just anxiety talk, if October had been some terrible dream I needed to let go of. I almost let go. Then I came home one afternoon and the notebook was gone. I checked the jacket, the closet, every shelf, every drawer, gone. I walked into the kitchen. Kelly was at the stove stirring something, completely relaxed. "Where is it?" She turned around, set down the spoon, looked at me with that same steadiness from the night Chris came over. "I read it," she said. "All of it, every word." Then she smiled, not warmly, not the smile I had fallen in love with, something smaller and colder and calculated. "I'm going to need you to be very careful from here on out, Jason. That notebook doesn't just describe what I did, it describes what you did, and I will always be a more convincing person in a room than you are." I stood there and thought about 12 years. I thought about the pact. The other one gets to decide what happens next. She had built that sentence like a trap on our wedding night. Candles, good wine, her hand in mine, filed it away, and waited. When the moment came, she sprung it, not as a promise between two people, as a leash around my neck. I was the insurance policy. I'd always been the insurance policy. I looked at her, this sharp, composed, noticing woman I had built a life with, and made a decision so quietly that I don't think my face moved at all. "You're right," I said. "I'll be careful." I smiled back. The next morning, while she was at work, I made 3 phone calls. Not to a friend, not to a family member, to people who ask questions for a living. Because here's what Kelly never understood about me in 12 years of marriage. She thought my silence meant I was afraid of her. She was wrong. My silence meant I was ready. She slid that notebook across the counter 3 days ago like it was leverage. She still doesn't know I made copies. She still doesn't know about the phone calls. She still doesn't know that the most dangerous thing in that house was never her. It was the quiet man she had underestimated for 12 years. The other one gets to decide what happens next. She was right about that. She just had the wrong person in mind. Act. Have you ever let someone believe they had the upper hand just long enough to make your move? Drop it in the comments.